So, Kenneth, thank you for taking your time to come on the podcast, and welcome.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on, man. Pleasure to be here.
So you do so much, and there's still because we've had conversations, and you always hint at all these things that you've been doing. So I want to learn the Kenneth Churchill story. So tell us, what was your role when you said that you were managing a bunch of restaurants? That before the cannabis industry, or take us back to how you got into business in the beginning?
For sure, man. You know, I've always had a job. I've had a full-time job since I was 12 years old, man. In and out a lot in restaurants. They were kind of the first thing that I really sunk my teeth into, and but I always knew that my ultimate goal, I always just wanted to own a business. That was always my expectations for myself. That was always my dream. It was kind of the way that I saw myself being able to kind of get out of the neighborhood I grew up in and get out and explore. And so I felt like restaurants were an easy way for me to kind of get in and learn how businesses work, you know? And so when I was in college, I went to college in Nebraska for business administration and marketing. And the whole time I was there, I was working for Chipotle Mexican Grill. I started there for $7 an hour as a dishwasher and just worked my way up. So by the time I left, I was there for about 6 years. By the time I left, I was an area manager. I had I oversaw all of Nebraska and Iowa markets, and you know, it was a really incredible experience. It was really fun to kind of learn how a business of that size is able to operate and how to oversee 100
so many
plus
different
employees.
That's the toughest thing is employee management for sure.
Man, the hardest part was, like, you know, especially at that time. I mean, I was 24 at that time.
Yeah.
And I was pretty convinced I could just do everything myself. And so that was kind of the first, I think, lesson that I learned was if you actually want to be successful in business and if you actually want to be successful at that scale, it's more about the people that you have around you and your ability to, you know, dictate and empower those people versus your ability just to do it all yourself. And so that really taught me how to have as much of an impact on a place as I can while only having to be there maybe, you know, a few days a month, right? Because with that many locations, you can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
And so it was about just creating SOPs. It was about creating structure. It was about making sure that everybody on my team was pulling their weight and we didn't have people that just weren't helping get things done. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I learned from that. And then the second biggest thing that I learned from that was that that just was not going to be my long-term path.
You don't be at Chipotle like tired of burritos every day.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I still eat Chipotle, you know, several times a week. But at the same time, you know, it wasn't going to allow for me to be able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And so, you know, I moved to California, and with the sole intention of just trying to start my own business and start to build a life that was interesting and challenging for me. And I was very lucky at that time. I had a friend from college who was living in San Diego.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so I remember I gave him a call and was like, "Hey, man, I think I'm going to make this change." And he's like, "Dude, do it. Like, come, you can live on my couch until we get things figured out." And I called him, you know, about 48 hours later and was like, "Hey, man, I'm in Vegas. I'll be there in about 4 hours." And then that was it, man. You know, and then he ended up being my co-founder for West Coast Cannabis Club. So, you know, when I was living with him, that's how we got started.
So West Coast Cannabis Club, how do you get that idea? The driving to San Diego, is that something you already had in mind, getting into the cannabis industry, or how did that process go?
It all just kind of happened, man. Right place, right time. So, I mean, San Diego, I'll be honest with you. I literally had a list of 10 different cities in the United States. It was Charlotte, it was New Orleans, it was San Diego, that I was just like, I think these would just be cool places to live.
Yeah.
And they were almost all driven by weather. Having lived in Nebraska and Colorado for my entire life at that point, I was over the cold. So moved to San Diego, man. That's because I was lucky enough to have my friend there. And then it was never that I wanted to start a cannabis business. It was that I wanted to start a business.
Yeah.
And at that time, the timing just worked. I had some friends in Colorado where I grew up who had you know, gone through the legalization aspects in Colorado and were quite successful, you know, and they were able to build businesses, you know, relatively inexpensive compared to other industries. And so I realized that in California, I was a little bit ahead of the curve. This was, 2015, 2016. And so there wasn't state legalization or anything at that point. And so I was willing to bet that there was going to be state legalization sometime soon. And I thought this was kind of my one opportunity, man, to be a part of an industry that is starting from the ground up.
Yeah, just opening up a whole...
Yeah, man. And there was something that was just really intriguing about, being able to help pioneer, an entire industry, which has obviously been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah, for sure.
People have been selling weed for a long time. So it's not like I was reinventing the wheel. But, it gave me an opportunity to help establish, SOPs and legalities and to work with local governments to help establish these rules. And it felt a lot more important than just starting
a business,
a restaurant or something else.
Like, oh, I'm starting something and there's so much paperwork and I have to go talk to the city council and talk to all these local mayors. And
and I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Yeah. Like when we first started, we started as a delivery service. And so I had a real small office in San Diego. And I literally I bought a pound from a buddy I knew and just split it into like 8 different strains. I bought just a few edibles from some people that I knew. I put up an ad on Weed Maps, and then I just sat in my office waiting for phone calls all day. And so for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, that was my
just Weed Maps,
6 days a week. Yeah. 6 days a week, and
that was during that was before it was legalized. It was medicinal only, right?
Yep, that was medicinal only. This was 2014 to 2016, really. And the goal was always to try to find a brick and mortar location. But the truth is, like, I started the business with a $10,000 loan from one of my best friends, and so like we weren't working with a lot, and so it was like, how can I get my foot in the door the cheapest way possible, and just see where we can take it. And so we started it as a little delivery service that at one point was doing a few $100s a day in sales, which was enough for me to pay rent and in gas. And eventually we built it into something I'm pretty proud of. But it took a long time, man. It wasn't ever the intention. And I think that I didn't realize, I had no idea what was
ahead of you,
what was going to be down the line.
How you started. So, okay, you started doing that for a few years, and then that led to the first physical location, or what was the next step after that?
Yeah, so...
Was that in San Diego, or you ended up...
So the first location was Cathedral City.
Nice.
I mean, I have this giant database that I was just looking at every single day, and I had literally put every city in California that had over 25,000 people in it. And I would wake up every day and I would just Google search the names of cities and then put cannabis. So, I would look up Cathedral City, cannabis, San Francisco, cannabis, whatever, and just see where their regulations were at that time. Mm-hmm. And so my goal was just to try to track it and see if I could try to time it with a city that I could get into with little to no resources. And so when I was ready to pull the trigger, there were only 3 cities that were actively giving cannabis dispensaries at the time, and one of them was San Francisco. I was broke, so nothing was happening in San Francisco, and it was Cathedral City, and it was Coalinga. And when I realized Cathedral City was next to Palm Springs, it was pretty easy for me to not want to go to Coalinga.
Where's Coalinga? I never...
In Central California, kind of middle of nowhere. And so I had never been
to the desert.
Never been to the desert my entire life. I honestly didn't even really know where Palm Springs was. I had heard of it.
You had heard of Palm Springs?
I had heard of it, but I wasn't like I was like, is Palm Springs? I knew about golf, right?
Yeah.
But it seemed like a cool, interesting place, and so I mean the first day that I had ever been to the desert was the day that I came out to sign my lease on my commercial building. And so this was late 2015, early 2016. We went through our application process through the Cathedral City, City Council. We were awarded, and then we opened up that location. I think it was like January 1st, 2017, when it was still medicinal at that point.
Wow, that's pretty fast track. And then you stayed at that location. Fast forward to. Was it 2018 when it became legal?
Yeah, so that
a year later,
2018 January 1st.
Or how was the first year operating on Cathedral City in the desert? How was that first year?
It was fun, but it was absolutely chaotic, man. Because like at those times, you gotta remember, like we were still battling against, you know, non-licensed cannabis dispensaries, and so it was like, you know, I had mine in Cathedral City. There was about 12 of us that were operating at that point, and 5 in Palm Springs. But we still had, you know, the churches out in Coachella.
Those churches were crazy.
You know, and so there was like
I remember I signed up for a church in Coachella. I was like,
I mean, and that place used to do volume, you know, crazy volume. But they, you know, they didn't have licenses. They weren't paying any taxes, any of those things, which, you know, whatever. But it made it an interesting dynamic, right? Because it was one of those where it was like you were playing by the rules, because I wanted to be a legitimate business. I'm not judging anybody for their choices, but I wanted to run it properly. I wanted it to run it like a business. And so, you know, you're battling against people who aren't trying to run their businesses that way.
Yeah.
And so that was, you know, that was interesting. But, you know, we actually got very lucky. We were able to get our license approved pretty quickly on the recreational side. And then actually on January 1st in 2018, I had the first recreational cannabis sale in California history out of that Cathedral City location. And so we had, I mean, it was at 4 a.m., bro. People were lining up, driving out from Arizona. We had a whole line outside of this small little shop in Cathedral City, bro. We had the news out there. Like it was absolutely wild. And it was like overnight, man, things went from, you know, stable to like, oh shit, like this is about to get a little bit crazy. Because, you know, we went from doing, you know, $500 to $1,000 a day in sales to doing, you know, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a day in sales, like overnight. And so that was, you know, obviously that's when things kind of took a step up. Yeah. And we started getting celebrities coming into the stores, and we started opening up new locations and just expanding like crazy. And, you know, obviously the cannabis industry's gone through some ups and downs, but, man, that specific period was just an absolutely wild ride.
Yeah. So the first sale in California history.
Yes,
that's
sir.
You should get that plaque, get like a gold certificate, put that in there. Like that's it was
dope.
That's legendary. I think.
It was cool, man, because there was actually like 5 stores that bureaucracy, right? So there was all sorts of weird stuff that happened, that everybody was processing their licenses, but you couldn't open until the state had given you your license back, basically approved it and gone. So everybody had their applications in, and for whatever reason, you know, I remember I called in to check on our application, and the lady was like, you know, we're overwhelmed right now. And I remember my response was just like, hey, listen, like, no worries, like this, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Help me out whenever you can. And I remember her saying, like, man, you're the first person all day who hasn't just been calling and screaming and yelling at me about us not getting this done. And then 2 hours later, it was approved. What? And so, like, I swear, like, I was just the fact that I was, like, nice to this poor lady who's just getting yelled at all day was, like, one of the only reasons where they pushed
this person treated me like a human. And hooked this foot.
And so, you know, I don't know. It felt like that was what was happening. And so there was only like 5 of us who were actually ready to open at 6 a.m. on January 1st. And really the race, the only 2 of us that actually decided to open were us and then Steve D'Angelo out of Oakland with Harborside, which at that point was, you know, they had Netflix documentaries. It was just this massive dispensary up in Oakland. The thing was, when he was going to do his first sale, he wanted it to be the mayor of Oakland. So they had this whole thing going, right? So they, as soon as 6 o'clock hit, they brought the mayor in. They went through a whole transaction, and so their transaction didn't happen until, you know, 6:04. Me, I just wanted that 6 o'clock. So I had my best friend come in, and he was waiting at like 5:59, and right at 6 o'clock, we already had everything rang up. We ran it up, and so my receipt is 6 o'clock with 0 seconds. And so even if there's somebody out there who maybe tied us, which I don't think there is, we were first. You can't have been any faster than we were.
That's
and so, I remember we did a full legal limit too, man. It was like a $1,400 like transaction, because I was like, it was going to be the first transaction in California history.
Like, $5.
Can't buy a fucking $5 pre-roll. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it was a wild time, man. It was definitely a fun experience.
That's sick. You got to print that receipt, load it up, have that in your office. Like that's That's something historic for sure. So then you end up expanding. You had the Cathedral City store, and then eventually you opened Palm Desert.
Yep.
And then now you have the Indio location. So the Palm Desert location, you had like a vertical integrated, everything all in there, 30,000 square feet. So you had like the lab, you had this front store, you had everything there, a lounge. Can you tell us a little bit about the vision for that, and then what ended up happening because of COVID?
Yeah, so I actually had 2 locations in Palm Desert. In 2018, I opened up a location on Deep Canyon in 111, and right across from Cactus Jack's, which is an iconic location in the desert. And that location absolutely took off. We were the first ones open in Palm Desert. So at that point, we were one of the highest volume stores in California when we first opened up that location, and that obviously started to make us realize that vertical integration was probably something we needed to start to focus on, because the supply chain was getting inconsistent because everybody was trying to figure out what this new market was going to look like. Everybody wanted to figure out how they were going to fit into it, and so it was becoming difficult to have such high volume stores and not have control of our supply chain in any way. And so we opened up our vertically integrated facility in the old KESQ news studio building off of Cook Street, back behind Harv's Car Wash there. And that location is 32,000 square feet. And we were really focused on the production side. We did have a retail store, but the goal of that one was to be on the production side. And it worked for a while. I think that's where everybody was trying to focus in cannabis at that point, was let me get like 5, 6, 7, 8 retail stores, and then let me get a hub where I can try to produce as much of my own product and sell it out. And again, it worked for a while. I was lucky enough. We had won a couple licenses up in Fresno. We had won a license in Corona. So we were cooking. We were making everything work. And then we opened up that location on March 10th, 2020. It was an incredible day. We did hundreds of transactions. Had a line all the way down the street. And then, 3 days later was COVID.
The world shut down.
So I remember it was 3 days later, I was watching a basketball game, and all of a sudden they started pulling everybody off the basketball court, and then we find out Tom Hanks has COVID, and then, everything just changed in the desert. And specifically, things were actually good for cannabis.
Yeah, that was some wild times
for a little while. Because everybody was at home and everybody had, checks. And so everybody was like, let's smoke, And so it was going well for a while. But I think what really impacted us out here, man, is, they started canceling Coachella. They started canceling, BNP Paribas and these events that were just bringing a lot of people in. And then, while this is happening, every city in the desert is adding dispensaries
every week, there's a
incredibly
new
fast.
Yeah.
And so we went from, when I first opened in Cathedral City, there was 6 of us in Cathedral City. There was, I believe, 6 in Palm Springs, and that was it for legal dispensaries. And actually, there was actually 3 or 4 in DHS at that time. And then within 18 months, there was 30 plus dispensaries in Palm Springs, 20 in DHS, and 20 in Cat City. And so things got, just way too flooded, way too fast. And so, with all of the ups and the highs and the crazy times with cannabis, we've definitely seen just some absolutely, just devastating times for the local cannabis businesses as well. And so, that was about the time that we started realizing that the growth wasn't going to be
as fast as they expected.
What we wanted.
Well, that happens with every market. Is like it explodes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The hype is the brand new thing.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be part of it, and then boom, it just downhill from there. Because I've been seeing so many stores just start closing. So many businesses are starting closing left and right. So, what's the current state of the industry right now? Over the last few years, like, is it really in a downtrend, or some of the business hurting? Is it because of the taxes, or what's like the biggest effect on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously incredibly complicated, but it's not the general state of the industry is really struggling at this moment for a lot of reasons. I mean, we had over licensing and overproduction, so there was too many stores in too few of markets. And so what people don't necessarily realize is that even though it feels like there's way too many dispensaries, there's close to 60% of California cities still don't have any dispensaries. And so they've just chosen to not have cannabis dispensaries. And so what happens is everybody who wants to compete is forced to go into the cities that do allow it.
Yeah.
And a lot of those cities saw money signs, and they saw, an ability to make a very significant amount of tax revenue. And so they didn't really regulate the market probably the way that they should have. And so what ended up happening is you had 40% of the cities in California just ended up open season for cannabis dispensaries, especially out here in the desert. And so we had people who were living in San Francisco, wanted to open up a cannabis dispensary, but Palm Springs is one of the only places they can do it. And so now you've got people who are spending, $1.5 million, $2.5 million opening up a dispensary in Palm Springs when they're never going to live here. They never care to be here, but they are impacting the market here, right? Because they can't open one where they want to open it, so they just go where they can, to be fair, that's what I had done at the same time, although I chose to live here and invest into the community. And then at the same time, we had way too much overproduction on the actual flower cannabis side, and so even in 2020, I mean, pounds were going for about $2,400 a pound, and now I think your indoor pounds are floating around 1,000.
Wow!
And so most of these giant facilities, especially the indoor ones, when they were doing their projections, never even contemplated that indoor flower could get to under $1,000 a pound. And so that obviously just gutted that whole side of the industry. And so, in the grand scheme of things, like, listen, we go out 20 years from now, I think some of this was a little bit necessary, right? Because we had that rush for everybody to try to get in. And then now we're just having a little bit of the reckoning where you're just going to see a majority of everybody who was invested into it have to shut down or reevaluate how they want to do business, because it's just, there's not enough to go around. Obviously, it gets even more complicated when you start talking about taxes. The state has just completely, ravaged these businesses between the amount that we have to pay for licensing fees straight up. But people don't realize it's more than just that. It's licensing fees. You're paying more in rent, right? Because the landlord is like, well, if you're going to be a cannabis business, my insurance is going to be more expensive, so your rent's going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
And then you've got employees that they're going to be more expensive because it's a potentially less safe position in some people's minds than others, and they need to be more qualified. And so you're paying more on it. Now you have to have security guards at your store during hours of operations, maybe even 24 hours a day. And people don't understand security guards. You're spending $250,000 a year on just having somebody stand there, just having somebody stand there, which they need to be there. But we really don't have incidents like that out here in the desert. And so you're just spending a lot of money just to have somebody, make sure that everything feels safe for everybody. And so, all of these things combined with the fact that the taxes are absolutely, just batshit crazy.
What are like the tax rates for cannabis industry?
Yeah, so right now the state taxes, we pay the same, 8.5% to 9% sales tax that every business pays already. And so let's call it 9%. It's a little bit different in all the desert cities, but it's 9% right now. And then on top of that, we pay a city tax. Typically, for a while, the tax was 10% to the city. So you're already at, 19. But, myself and with the help of CVCAN and a couple of the local operators have actually been able to, work with the cities to lower those taxes. So almost every city in the desert now has gone from 10% to 5%. And so now you've got your 9% sales tax, you got your 5% city tax, and then the state charges 19% sales tax. And so, you're at 33% sales tax, right? So right away, if you buy something for $100, $33 of that is just going to taxes. And that's not including, payroll taxes, corporate entity taxes, the fact that we can't write off federal taxes. And so, at the end of the day, for most cannabis businesses, your actualized tax rate is close to 45%.
Oh, wow, that's great.
And then you got to realize that you're paying probably, 40% of your sales, if not 50% of your sales for the products that you're buying. And so you're basically left with 5 to 15% of your sales to pay rent, pay your employees, pay yourself, pay any investors you have, and then potentially hope that there's a profit, on the back end. And so, we've created a system that ultimately you need to do $2.5 to $3 million a year in sales just to pay your bills.
Yeah.
And that's wild. It's wild. I mean, $3 million is a busy restaurant. You do very well at $3 million as a restaurant. As a cannabis business, you're hoping that nothing crazy happens because the expenses are just out of control.
Yeah, that's not sustainable for sure. And especially like you said, like a lot of people start like from the ground up. Like
Right.
you said, you're putting together money with a couple investors, some friends. You're like, let's start this business.
Mm-hmm.
You pour your time and effort that sometimes you don't get that time back because you're like, I'm not going to pay myself, but I know this is going to pay off.
Yeah.
But then it's just like you're just drowning every single year. So.
Well, and that's what really happened, because as stores were allowed to just open wherever they wanted to, and then stores started shutting down, the value of those licenses started to kind of disappear, right? So that's what was really kind of wild about it all, is like as a business owner, your goal was always like, I get mine at the time of exit, really, right? So whenever I sell this business, that will be likely when I get the significant earnings that I'm going to make off of this business is when I sell it. And at this point in a lot of markets, you can maybe give your license away. I mean, right now, there are legitimately licenses that are on the market right now that if you have enough money to build out the dispensary and you want to take that ownership, you can get it for, 5 or 10K. And so the system is not working the way it's established. I'm in it for the long haul. I've got my Cathedral City store, and in that big location we were talking about earlier, we ultimately made the decision to just no longer pursue vertical integration, and so we winded that down, and it's no longer operational. But that's just more of a sign of where the market is right now. I think there's a lot of growth potential here. I think the people who can hold on for another 5 or 10 years while federal government figures out what the hell they want to do here.
Yeah.
And while the state figures out that they're not actually getting paid a lot of these taxes that they think that they're charging, because businesses are just going out of business and they're not able to actually pay these taxes. I think that we'll start to get a little bit of relief on the state and federal side, but you can't sit around and cross your fingers forever. So we'll see, man. I love the cannabis industry. I can't even begin to explain what it's brought to me personally, and the experiences that I've had, and the stories that are there. But it definitely was not the green rush that
the headlines were saying
that everybody wanted, man.
Well, I mean, that's what everybody was chasing, is like the next thing that
It was the
opportunity where change of the world is going to be for the next 100 years. Like, it's, imagine if you're there when Prohibition ended and you're one of the alcohol brands, like that's what people are saying. I remember that was pretty hyped up, and I've been following from the side. I've been watching the same thing. Like every other day, there was a new dispensary. Yeah. And I was getting invited by artists performing or whatever. Different lounges started hosting like events, music, all kinds of stuff. They give you free stuff just to get you in the door. And now it's like all these stores are closing. You said you had the Indio location right there, 111 by Neil's.
Yeah, right by Neil's, the iconic Neil's Lounge, man.
How's that one been?
It's been doing really well. So that one opened a little over a year ago. So we opened in April of 2024, just at the tail end of April. So we basically, missed all the fun parts last year. So this was the first year that we were able to be open for Coachella and Stagecoach and all of that. And that was just absolutely wild. So very thrilled with how that location is operating. That one, again, I've learned a lot over the last decade of doing this, and so the way I'm operating that location is different. We have a very small team, and they're just very dedicated to what they do, versus our old goal, which was let's have the team, and then let's pursue massive growth, right? But it's difficult. We've won 11 licenses in the last 10 years, and I only ended up opening probably 5 of those locations, because there's just nonsense that happens in cannabis that you just don't have to deal with anywhere else. I mean, we just recently won a license in the city of Riverside. There was 75 applications. They chose the top 14, and we were lucky enough to be one of them. And we spent 3 years on that location. The city approved us. They had us pay about $35,000, almost $40,000 application fee to the city. Told us to go out and find a location. We went out, found a location. We made our deposit. We were paying rent on that location for a year and a half, waiting for the city to get us to the approval. And then, unfortunately for us, there was a city council election. They brought in some very, conservative, hard stance city council members who considered, cannabis to be a narcotic and an extreme down, bad thing for their city, and scrapped the whole program.
Wow, that's crazy.
And we were $200,000 deep into that location, which would have been very likely the busiest location I've ever had. And just because the city decided they didn't want to do it anymore,
go in a different direction, damn,
they just take it away from you, and that's where it's like, even when you win, you still lose, man. And it's like, all right, you gotta be tough to be in this industry, man. You gotta be able to take those lumps and just wake up and do it again. And so I think that's where, for me, man, I'm gonna focus on what I do have. This desert has never strung me wrong, so we're gonna focus on these locations that we have out here. Desert. And see if we can just build something special. Specifically, that Indio location, I really believe in that one. I think myself and Gopi are the only two local owners in Indio there. The other locations out there are all owned by just these massive corporations who have never even been to the Coachella Valley. Yeah. So I'm my hope is that us as the locals can really get our ground game together and get the support of the local people, and just bring what the people of Indio need.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've talked to people, they've seen it and they're like, oh, the one next to Neil's. That's why they say
it, man.
The one next to Neil's.
It's easy. That's my
That's
favorite
a good
part.
location that you got.
Yeah,
you pick a landmark, something that people recognize.
That one's wild, man.
Cool.
That location was a home, and
was a house.
Was built in 1960. And so, me and my buddy, we build out all of our locations. We do all the demo, we do all the drywall, we do most of the painting, we do as much of it as possible. And so that one was just an absolute mess, man. I was pulling
plumbing,
down,
you have to change plumbing, everything.
Oh my God, turning a house built in 1960 into a
up to standards.
Nice dispensary was quite the project, man. But I'm loving it, man. We've been welcomed with open arms there. I think the La Quinta market will likely never have a dispensary. I think the city government there just doesn't have the stomach for that. And so I think it's very good for us being where we are right there, because we've got that La Quinta market as well as the Indio market that we can pull from. And there's plenty of people there. And so for us, it's just to find out how we fit in, and how we're going to be as successful as we possibly can.
No, that's cool. No, we'll definitely be supporting. We got if you guys check out the Indio location or Cat City too. We are listening from the other side of the valley. But so next step, you mentioned earlier, you were like, oh, the only way that people sometimes get to see a return on their investment on their time, maybe they're barely operating on margins, but when they sell their business, you said that was like the way that a lot of people are like, once you sell your business, you retire, you move on to whatever.
Right.
So recently we're talking, you got into selling businesses and buying businesses.
Brokerage, yeah.
Business brokerage, people who want to sell their business, evaluate their business. Can you tell us a little about what the process is like, how you got to that?
Yeah,
to
totally.
The next venture?
For most businesses, I think that's what a lot of people don't necessarily understand. But for most businesses, your big payday tends to be when you exit from that business, right? And so obviously you're pulling down a salary, you're able to keep profits. But for most businesses, that doesn't necessarily translate to life-changing amounts of money. And so it's likely that you're grinding your way through this business to establish what you need to do. You end up selling that business, and then that's when you get a significant chunk of money. And so I've sold 2 of the locations that we've had so far. And I think that what I learned through that process was that, especially out here in the desert, almost everybody who's selling businesses, almost every business broker that you'll find out here is a real estate agent who is just willing to do it for you. They very rarely have any kind of actual business experience, and they don't even have very much experience actually selling businesses, but these opportunities come up, and so they just give it a try.
Yeah.
Right. And so that wasn't working for me when I was trying to sell mine. The valuations that I was getting felt disingenuous. The people that were being brought to me, I felt like were not in my best interest. They were potentially in that agent's best business. And so I decided just to represent myself. And so I went out, found my own buyer, went through the whole process, and executed that sale on my own, if you will. And it taught me a lot about this process, and it also taught me that as a business owner, you really want another business owner representing you.
Yeah.
You know,
someone that has that experience, they've seen, they know what it's like. Yeah.
And they know what you're going through. They know what's a reasonable ask of you. They know what you've got to do to get your business ready for a sale. And so I've had a lot of fun doing this side of the business. And it's something that I'm really going to focus a lot of my time on, because I think there's a major need of it out here in the Coachella Valley of people who have these businesses and just don't really know how to exit. And and you and I have talked, like, even if you want to exit, you're running your business, right? So It's not like you've got enough time probably to go out and find buyers and to approach the people that you're going to need to do to work on SBA loans, pre-approvals, and all of these things. It's a lot of work, and so I think it's something that I can bring a lot of help to the local entrepreneur community, and it's something I really enjoy and love doing. And so I'm full in now as
you were mentioning like part of the process is evaluating a business to see how much it's worth. Like you guys go into a restaurant, like what is the process of evaluating a business? Like, can you give us an example?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that you have to realize as a business owner if you're going to sell is that whoever's buying you is likely not trying to buy a job. Right, so they're trying to buy a business. They're trying to buy an investment. They're not just trying to buy something where they can just pay themselves $60,000 a year to come in and run that business from day one. And so there's a lot of things that you have to do as a business owner to get ready for a sale that maybe you haven't really thought about. And so a lot of people don't realize that if you are the business owner and you are running that business on a day-to-day basis, and if you were to leave for 2 weeks and that business is going to fall apart, that's a very, very difficult business to sell, because somebody who's going to come in to buy it doesn't like the idea that it's attached to you, right? So if you're somebody, because you're going to be gone now. Yeah. So they're going to have to come in and either do the job that you were doing, or they're going to have to hope that they can do it as well as you can from day one so that they don't lose the entire business that they just purchased. And so one of the biggest things that you have to do when you're getting ready to sell your business is to make sure you have a management team in place. Make sure you have really detailed SOPs to every level of everything that happens on a day-to-day basis, because likely the investor who's coming in is going to want to put a manager in place, and they're not going to want to be the day-to-day operator in most instances, especially in restaurants. With restaurants, it's tricky, right? Because anybody can start one for the most part. And so if they're a chef and they want their own restaurant, they're not likely buying yours. They're probably just starting their own. And so that's where people who are buying these restaurants are probably buying them as more as a piece of their portfolio or as an additional restaurant that they already have going. And so there's just a lot of things to take into consideration. And I think just knowing ahead of time, like knowing what you can start doing now to get your business ready for a sale in 3 or 4 years is really the most important thing for a business owner to keep in mind. And we talk about, like, over 40% of the small businesses in America right now are owned by baby boomers. Yeah. And so this is a major thing, is that all of these baby boomers are going to be retiring soon, if not now, right? So we've got 40% of the businesses in the entire United States are about to be up for grabs. They're going to need new operators, and they're either going to be passed on to a family, which is becoming less and less typical than it used to be. They're going to be sold, or they're just going to go out of business when that person chooses to retire. And so, my goal is to try to make sure that these people are able to sell these businesses, and I'm trying to find more young people to come out and be business owners, you
Yeah.
know, and to realize that you can come in and you can take over an already established business with 15 and 20 years worth of expertise, and you can fit your way into there instead of necessarily just having to start it
from
over
scratch. Yeah,
from scratch.
Because a lot of people just start their own business right now.
Yeah.
It's like, especially now. I think after COVID, everything accelerated with social media. People are stuck at home, like you were saying earlier. They're just there's nothing to do for like a year. So people are watching videos, they're learning, trying it out. Sometimes it takes that you lose your job because of COVID. You're like, I have nothing else to do. I remember so many people were like selling food from their garages.
Yep.
They were trying to sell whatever, you know, selling snacks, delivering anything just because. I mean, people did.
You got to get the cash flow coming in, man. And but that's the thing. There's so many kinds of
but
businesses.
People never look into like, I think the number one reason is money. So how much money do you need to buy a business, or is there like certain programs or loans that you could get? Like, what is the process?
So there's just no easy answer on that. The answer is you can buy a business with $0, or you can spend millions of dollars. The reality is there is a deal available for everybody. The hardest part is just finding that deal, right? So what is it that you want to do? I mean, I know people who've taken over ATM routes, you know, with very, very little money down, $5,000, $10,000, buy a couple ATMs and you can take over an already established route, and you've got some kind of, you know, passive income coming in. I know people who've taken over, you know, beat down businesses that the seller is willing to seller finance 100% of that business, right? Where they're basically like, I don't want to run this anymore. I'm getting ready to retire. I need somebody who's going to come in and run it for me. If you are willing to just pay me off the profits for the next, you know, X amount of years, then you can own the business. And so you get to come in with zero money down. 100% seller financing is more rare. It's a difficult thing to find, but it is absolutely available. I think what's more typical are people who try to use SBA loans for purchasing. And with an SBA loan, you have to put 10% down, and then the SBA loan can cover the rest. And so let's say you're buying, you know, a car wash. If that car wash is listed at, you know, $450,000, if you have an SBA loan, you have to pay $45,000, and the SBA loan can cover the rest. And so that $45,000, you know, you can find investors for it. You can make it yourself. You can work with the seller and try to get seller financing on that, right? And just try to pay them off that $45,000 over a year or two. All of that's going to come down to what that deal looks like, what the cash flow looks like, and what your risk tolerance is, and how much you're willing to put in as an individual. And so I just feel like if it's one of those things where if you want to own a business, you just got to do it. You got to find a way to do it.
You got to find a way.
You can't build hurdles for yourself, because there's plenty of them that you're going to find along the way. Just find out what you would like to do and find a way to get it done. And you know, and it's worked. Again, like I started a cannabis business with $10,000. You know, these days it takes a lot more to get these places open. And so it's all about, you know, how much you're willing to sacrifice and able to sacrifice, and what kind of deals are out there and available.
And then right now, like, let's say someone listening to this, they're like, you know, I want to start a business. I don't even know where to start. I barely have any savings. What's like a quick, I mean, not quick, everything takes work and time, but like what's something, if you had to start from zero right now, you're like, okay, I need to make $10,000 doing this kind of business just so I could fund the next project? Or what will you do? How would you?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two ways of looking at it. I mean, like, one of them is like, find something that you're passionate about and something that you love, and then work towards that, right? So if you're big into media, then let's talk about starting a podcast company, right? If you're passionate about cannabis, and let's talk about how we can get you involved in a cannabis company. And some of this might be maybe you're only a minority owner at first, right? Maybe we only work you in there as a 10 or 20% owner, and you work your way up. But the number one thing is you got to remember that in a lot of businesses, this is going to be your life, right? So you want to find something that you actually care about. I think the other side, and what a lot of people are doing more recently, are looking at businesses that we find are going to be stable for a long time, right? So some businesses aren't going anywhere. HVAC in the desert, It's not going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Specifically home services, right? So
For
home
sure.
services businesses are incredibly popular right now. And so those are a lot of the ones that people are going into. And then a lot of people also want more passive businesses, right? So if you want more of a passive business, let's say you already have a W-2 job, you already have an income coming in that you don't want to quit, but you just want an extra $500 or $1,000 a month or whatever you can, then there's things, like we said, the ATM routes, food trucks, things like that. The big, I think right now there's a really big push in the business brokerage side on car washes and laundromats and businesses that take a little bit more of an investment, but they're very passive, right? So like a laundromat at the end of the day, you really don't need to be there 40, 50 hours a week, most likely. You got to go in there, make sure people aren't messing with your machines.
Yeah.
You probably have to have one employee who sits in the back to make sure it operates. But at the end of the day, it's a very easy cash business that if you can find the right deal is a really great opportunity. And so like I would say home service businesses, car washes and laundromats, they tend to be the hot button topics for people right now because they see them as potentially passive and also just not. The future is bright for those businesses.
Yeah,
you don't have to.
They're always gonna be there. And they're simple. Like you get the concept.
Yeah, it's
like,
the trades, man.
Because a restaurant sounds hard. Because it's like, oh shit, if I take over a restaurant, like,
right,
that sounds a lot more complicated. They already have an established like customer base that has certain standards.
Yeah.
You're gonna go in there and switch the menu. Then it's like the existing customers might not come. The staff, like, I feel like it's more.
There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of risk. People love trendy in restaurants, right? So you'll see restaurants that are incredibly successful for 4 or 5 and 6 years, but years 7, 8, and 9, maybe something opened up across the street. And so restaurants are seen as risky. You can still make a lot of good money in restaurants. Yeah. If you're a personal person and you're willing to be in the dining room every day and meeting the people that are out there, you could still make a lot of good money in restaurants. I think it's one of those that it's very likely to not be passive unless you just have an incredible team on your side that you trust more than anything, and it's likely to be something that is not necessarily going to be a 20+ year business, right? So you got to understand that it's likely a business that you're probably going to want to operate for a certain amount of time and then prepare for a sale, or understand that there might be a shelf life on that particular business. And so that's the only reason that people get a little bit wary when it comes to buying restaurants, because the people who tend to be in a position to buy those businesses are just kind of looking for a different style of investment.
Yeah.
But restaurants are hard too, because people attach so much of their identity to their restaurant.
It's
you know
like
what I mean?
Yeah.
I designed it. I hired everybody. It's probably named after me. Like
family recipes and grandma and
100%, right? And so the person who buys that is going to have to strike that same gold that you did, right? And that's not always going to be.
Or get the same wavelength on that passion that you have, and it's hard when you're not attached to those specifics.
Real hard. It's real hard.
What's some of the biggest right now? You've been having conversations, I'm sure, with business owners trying to sell. What are some of the first things that you see when you have those meetings that you tell them, oh, you guys need to fix this? What are like some of the common mistakes that some business owners are doing, that if someone's listening to this, they could like, oh shit, maybe I'm thinking about selling, like, but I need to fix this? What's like someone?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I mean, one is that most people just don't even really think about selling their business, right? For some of the same reasons that we just talked about. Sometimes it becomes almost a little bit too much of your personal identity, right? And you stop thinking of it as a business, and you start kind of treating it and operating it like a job. If you talk to a lot of small business owners, I think most of them will even admit that sometimes it feels a lot more like having a job than it does owning a business, right? Because you feel like when you're the boss, you don't have to answer to anybody, right? But you do. You end up answering to your investors, your employees. Like there's not much change in that, right? And so the idea for a lot of people is that they're just going to kind of do this until they die or whatever, right? And I think I would just push back on that a little bit and say you just don't have to do that, right? Like it's okay to build something and then to capitalize on it. It's okay to sell these businesses, but you have to remember that if you're going to sell your business, you really need to start preparing like 3 years ahead of time. You need to be building your business today for your sale in the future. And a lot of that comes with making sure that you have an empowered staff who actually knows how to do things when you're gone, making sure that the SOPs are actually done and legit, and that if somebody comes in, you can just hand them a book and be like, hey, this is how we do things. I think a lot of times people get caught up. They don't realize that, let's say you're a landscaper, right? And you do $5 million a year in revenue, but it's all off of like one country club.
Yeah.
That's very risky for somebody who's going to come in. Like, they would most likely rather buy somebody who has maybe $3 million in sales, but has 30 or 40 clients, because if you lose that one country club, the whole business is gone.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of times business owners will get too comfortable or complacent when they have one whale on the line.
Yeah.
And then they don't ever get off of that. And then let's say that country club that you have has new leadership come in and they want to reevaluate, then you're completely out and you're having to basically restart your whole business. And so I think a lot of it is getting business owners to take the blinders off and to realize what their potential weaknesses are and to try to fix them before they sell, not as they're trying to sell, because those are things that are just going to slow down the process over time.
And then someone looking to buy a business, you've been getting those calls. You say you have a list of investors and people ready looking at opportunities.
It's everybody, because just like you said, I think what people are starting to realize is that the American dream has changed, right? And I think one of the most difficult things to look at is a lot of us have invested so much time and money into college and our careers and all of these things that we thought were going to get us to the life that we wanted.
Yeah,
and then here we are still not owning our homes and still owning student loans and all of these things, right? And so at the end of the day, it's like that W-2 lifestyle is not translating to the amount of income that a lot of us wanted. And the fact of the world is that over 80% of millionaires own businesses. If you want to make money, you very likely will need to own your business or work for a very large company. Otherwise, it's difficult to make enough money to even own a home these days, And I think that's the difficulty. And so if you want to get there, you just need to take that leap. And so that's where we have people who are, like first-time business owners that are calling us that are just like, I'm ready to quit working for somebody else and I want to have control of my own future. And then we also have, large venture capital companies that are like, listen, I want you to package up, say like 10 car washes and we want to buy all 10 of them at the same time, right? So all of those things are out there. I think, for me, it's really what I have more fun with is the small business side, like helping people who want to take control of their own lives, who want to take control of their own future and have the opportunity to bet on themselves. Like, those are the people that I love working with. Because I have found in my life, at the end of the day, you have to bet on yourself. Nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah.
And so, I love trying to help people take that first leap, figure out what it is that they want to do, and then help them find deals, right? And so we act. If somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, like I really want to own, a Mexican restaurant, but I don't even know where to start," we literally will just start
looking at Mexican.
Working through every Mexican restaurant. Like, hey, listen, we've got a buyer who's really interested in this. Like, are you open to selling? Is this how do we get this? And every conversation is different. Every deal is different, but that's kind of the fun for me. And so, man, it's a very labor intensive opportunity, and that's why I think a lot of real estate agents almost don't even really want to do this, because it's not as simple as
someone's trying to sell a home, someone's trying to buy a home, quick, boom,
let's
go.
Real estate, like let's go in there, let's take a trendy video, let's throw it up, send out a couple emails. People are going to start calling me because they just see it on LoopNet or whatever, right? This takes a lot more work. So LoopNet's basically like a commercial Zillow. So like Zillow or Redfin, like where you go and you can look at prices on houses. LoopNet is where you would use for commercial buildings. Oh, okay. And so it's just a listing website. But yeah, I mean, like selling a business is a lot harder. Yeah, it is a lot harder.
It sounds like a funner game than real estate.
It's a lot more of a funner game. The
especially when you're coming from, as a business owner with different experiences. You're talking to them, you see their same struggles, or things that you've been through as well. So
100%, man.
Well, how long you been doing this already?
So like I said, I sold my first business in 2019, and so I've been representing businesses it's been 6 years now, man. So,
yeah. What was that business that you sold?
So the first one I sold was a location that I had on Deep Canyon in 111. So it was a cannabis dispensary, and again, I got probably $300,000 more for that than what brokers were telling me I can get, because they didn't know the business,
Okay.
And so that was one of those where I realized real quickly, I was like, okay, wait, like there's a need for somebody who actually knows how to get into these financials, who actually knows how to talk to the staff, like even with restaurants, like you've worked on plenty of places, right? Where you can, like a restaurant owner can tell you that they're doing, X amount in sales. You walk into the walk-in and it's dead empty.
Yeah.
You get an idea pretty quickly of what's actually happening in here, right? And so I think like just having the feel of how businesses actually operate is a massive advantage in this line of work, versus somebody who thinks that they're just going to kind of middleman a deal and split some commission off of it. So I love it, man. I think running, owning, and operating businesses has been my passion since I was a little kid, man. I've been trying to sell things since I learned that you could just trade things for money. I was like, all right, well, this is my life now, and so it's what I'm passionate about. I love helping people, man. I love helping people buy a business and then all of a sudden see them actually be successful at what they did and achieve those goals and those dreams, man. Like that's what it's all about.
Oh, and where could people reach out to you? Like if people are interested, curious, maybe you help people like evaluate their business as well. Is that something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest part of it. A lot of times is just helping them come up with a valuation on how much their business is worth, man. But I'm my brokerage is the Firm brokerage over in Palm Desert. You've been over there a couple times to say hello. My email is just Kenneth at thefirmcompanies.com. Easy way to get a hold of me. Otherwise on Instagram, I've got my phone number and everything listed directly on there. So, Kenneth.Churchill or SoCal Business Broker are my two Instagram handles. Find me on there and absolutely 100%. Like, let's just talk about how we can make your business more successful and hopefully help you find a positive exit.
Okay, for sure. Well, Kenneth, thank you so much for sharing all this today.
Of course,
man.
I love it.
The gems. And no, I'm excited to see where this goes. Like, I've always been fascinated because I always heard about people buying and selling businesses, but you never really meet somebody. And like, I was like, what? This is crazy.
I love it, man.
This business is cool. I've been family business since I was a kid as well. And to me, like, I don't know, like people that just have a regular job, to me, it's a little weird.
It's like, hard, man.
I like the grind and the hustle and the phone calls, and the emails and the downturns and the good times. And it's just, I don't know, I like that game.
Yeah, man. And I think when you own a business, like, so for instance, I thought I was starting a cannabis dispensary, right? So that was my job, right? And then all of a sudden it was like people started coming in. They're like, oh, I love your guys' name. Like, you guys should make T-shirts. You should make hats. So I start making T-shirts, making hats. Then they start taking off. Now all of a sudden I own an apparel company on top of this. And then all of a sudden, like, local cities are like, hey, like, we want to establish regulations in cannabis. Like, would you come in and talk to us about how to do that? And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now I'm going to city council meetings and I'm lobbying local cities to establish regulations. And it's like what I thought was just owning a little cannabis dispensary. All of a sudden, when you own a business, now you own an apparel company, you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you're a lobbyist. You got to do whatever it takes, man. And so, like, that's what I love about business is, like, when people ask me, like, what do you do day to day? Like, how do you even answer that as a business owner? I do whatever I need to do,
whatever's
and I love that life, man. I love it.
It's always different, meeting different people and just moving forward. So.
100%, man.
All right, Kenneth, well, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, bro.
We'll definitely get you in another episode in the future. Make sure you guys follow. I'll put all the links in the description, and good luck with everything, man.
Appreciate you, bro.